So I want to talk about some recent events, of course, because recent events are popular and good, always. Never any bad news around here, is there, in Britain? To go back to a segment that I was talking about last week, in fact. So the wonderful thing about England is that in every town and city, you can find some story of its history that is being really important in some way or another. Mm-hmm. And one of those is Tilbury. And the reason that I bring up Tilbury is because in the English mind, if you mention Tilbury, if you enjoy history, if you're a history buff, is that it's where Queen Elizabeth I and her men gave a speech at Tilbury.
Have you got the lines?
Oh no, I've not got the lines. I've not got the lines. I had to hold myself back. It's kept in the jacket.
I may not have the body of a man, but I have the body of a king of England.
Yes,
words to that effect. I've used it in many speeches in the past. It's absolutely a gem of a line.
It's a great speech.
Gem of a line.
It's a great speech. However, and this was obviously in the face of potential of Spanish invasion and the Spanish Armada. And so you might think of Tilbury and remember, that great story from English history. But there's another story from Tilbury that the establishment wants you to know that is even more important, an even greater avenue of myth-making of what England is, what modern Britain is, and who we should be. And that, of course, is the fact that it was recently the 77th anniversary of the SS Empire Windrush coming from the Caribbean with many, many Jamaicans and, people from Trinidad and British Guyana. And this is just over a period of about 30 years, with this being the beginning. We had what we now call the Windrush generation coming to Britain. And this has been basically a day of national celebration for the politicians. This marks the new enlightenment into Britain, because we were a backwards, terrible people until the diversity came, showed us the error of our ways, and what true culture, what true cuisine, what true philosophy, all of these things really were. So
I was just looking at that boat and thinking, why did Natasha Irons actually allow that to be gone? Because the boat's white. Surely there's something wrong in that picture.
Yes. And this is a constant thing you'll see. The quote attributed it, which is from a poem, I think, by one of the Windrush people. You called and we came. I'll explore that a little bit later. It's no button working there. It's all right. So I just want to play...
Today is a day of celebrating the Windrush generation. The first nurses, the first midwives in our NHS, the veterans who returned after fighting for freedom in the Second World War, some coming back to serve again, the construction workers who literally helped build back Britain after the war, the transport staff, the teachers, the shop owners, the cleaners. It was the rebuilding of our country and actually shaping what became modern Britain. I'm here to make good on the promise that we made. We launched the £1.5 million Windrush Compensation Advocacy Support Fund, hugely important to help organisations provide advocacy and support for applicants. And I'm delighted that today we announced the new Windrush Commissioner, the Reverend Clive Fostagg. And we need to be really clear, learn the lessons, so an injustice like that can never happen again.
I'm going to unpack all of this. Yes, Firas.
I was just,
I had a bunch of questions. Firstly, injustice against who? The British or the Windrush people?
The Windrush. We've never suffered an injustice ever.
No, okay, fair enough. The second one is, does being on benefits count as reparations?
No, you get that and reparations as well.
Fair. Just, I wanted to...
Bonus.
To do that. Yeah, fine.
No, you see, for me, I was looking at that last line he says, so we can have a commissioner here, so this could never happen again. So the legacy of the Channel migrant generation who laid the foundations for modern Britain. We will obviously have a Channel migrants commissioner in a few years' time.
Yes. So this here, though, but I really want to dwell on these two words because they're proper establishment words, which is just modern Britain.
Yes.
Because really what you're looking at here, and the reason that this is trotted out, the reason that you have garden parties at 10 Downing Street like this, the reason that all of this language is used, is because it's essentially the French Revolution of Britain, right? It's what it's trying to do is bring Britain to year zero.
Yes.
Right. So there is old Britain,
Yeah.
the bad white supremacist evil Britain of the past.
That ended the slave trade globally. These white supremacists, yes.
Yes, but enough of those facts. Keep them to yourself, all
Never let
right?
the truth get in the way of a good story.
But also there's another important part of this, which is that obviously modern Britain is simply bywords for diverse Britain, and the point of that is that it decentralizes the British people from the creators of their own civilization. Yeah. Okay, so what you have is now after post-World War, we weren't the most important people in the story of Britain. In modern Britain, everyone has contributed. Everyone has an equal level of importance, right?
No, I disagree. I don't think everybody has an equal level of importance.
No, but this is their narrative.
Those people who came over in Windrush had a greater level of importance. Those who came over from Africa as a consequence of what was happening in Uganda, they had a greater level of influence. Those people who've come from Pakistan had a greater level of influence. All I hear from the MPs who are spouting this nonsense is that these people had a greater level of influence. They built Britain.
Yes.
I think the correct counter to the notion of modern Britain is ancient Britain, to emphasize that this is a country that's been in a certain way for a couple of thousand years, longer than that, and that it exists separately from modern Britain. Because as you say, modern Britain means the modern is more important than the Britain.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's what it is, right?
Yeah. The modern landmass of Britain, where everyone is.
There's no equality here. There's no recognition of the fairness of everybody contributing here. The emphasis on these different separate groups is to emphasize their greater contribution.
Yes.
Whatever my mum didn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, she was born here. She may have worked all her life in a variety of jobs, as did my grandfather. But their contribution was less than those who were the first nurses that came from Barbados or Jamaica.
Were there no nurses in Britain before that?
Of course not.
I heard about a certain Florence.
She's fake.
No.
Fake?
Yeah, she didn't exist.
Right.
No, she didn't exist.
Didn't
No.
exist. I didn't know you guys didn't have nurses until they came from the Caribbean.
No, not at all. No,
I'm
not
very sorry.
plumbers.
No
plumbers.
plumbers.
No builders.
No electricians. No builders.
No construction work.
No.
Wow.
We were like the Romans. We were like
You had no
Caractacus
indoor
and
plumbing.
No, we had mud huts.
You had no indoor plumbing before the Windrush generation.
No, and what we went on to do was we built these really flimsy ships, and we went and exported our mud huts to the rest of the world so they could have their mud huts too.
Yeah.
Is what actually happened. So who is this new Windrush commissioner?
Don't know.
Right.
Never heard of him before.
You're about to. So this is Clive Foster, MBE, and I had a look into this man, and it really didn't take me long at all from a quick Google search to find out that this guy was really big on BLM.
Oh.
Would you believe?
Oh, no. Really?
Yes, unfortunately so.
He's an Equal Lives Matter person.
No, so he says, to what extent these shackles become fully loose will depend on a number of factors, such as the collective will to speak out, our ability to truly listen, and to courageously take action to do the right thing. Structural racism has been built over centuries and will require sustained effort to bring it down. Bringing it down, we must ensure that Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, tearing down statutes and towards installing statutes that strengthen equality and justice in our society.
Yes.
As if tearing down a statute makes me feel equal and a justice.
Tearing down old Britain
Yeah.
to make way for modern Britain.
Yeah.
As it always is. This is the sort
This
of
is criminal.
revisionism that we're all used to after the BLM stuff. I won't dwell on it too long. But I do want to talk about the fact that... but also, just one more thing. It's like, so... do we think that he feels accountable, obligated, responsible for any Englishman?
No.
No.
For not even any Englishman, any Pakistani, Any Hindu, anyone outside of his own particular interest group.
I think he'll apply his own interest group first,
Yes.
and then other interest groups that support his interest group, as provided by his boss, who's given him the opportunity to have power over those interest groups.
Yeah.
Because this whole, for those of you who aren't schooled on the history of modern Britain, back in 2018 there was something that was called the Windrush scandal, which was essentially you had the 1948 Nationality Act, which allowed anyone with a British passport from across the Commonwealth to come to Britain. Great mistake, and something that Enoch Powell warned about, and what the repercussions of this oversight would be. And then in the 1970s, you had another act passed. I can't remember the exact name of it, but it basically meant that anyone who had come to stay over those past 30 years had now been granted permanent residence. And so the 500,000 people who's come as part of the Windrush migration over the past 30 years were just given leave to stay.
Yeah.
Then in 2018, the Home Office under Theresa May, I believe it was, and the great stateswoman Amber Rudd, then Home Secretary, she made an oversight that where some Windrush people were accidentally threatened with deportation, which I don't know, it's an interesting oversight.
I think you're missing a key part of the detail. They hadn't done the administrative work required to prove their citizenship.
Yes.
And to prove that these laws had applied to them. So these laws came in, but I think my vague understanding of it is that you still probably had to fill in some paperwork to ensure that everything was done correctly, and that
we do like paperwork,
which is understandable. Making the written word holy is how this country became great in the first place.
When the Windrush brought paperwork to
yes. I think they had a stash of pencils, which was new to you guys. But anyway, they couldn't be bothered with actually doing that bit of paperwork to prove that they were there legally.
I'll be a little bit of a devil.
So the machine went burr and sort of said you were supposed to be deported. That's the extent of it. It wasn't some kind of nefarious, evil Theresa May.
No.
That the people who built Britain must now be expelled.
Yeah, because the Tory, but this is the people that the Tories want to appeal to.
Yeah.
They'd never want to deport them ever.
No.
So that kind of detail, I think, should.
There was an element of that, and I'll be a little bit on the devil's advocate. Why? Is because the Home Office produce literally every other day stats on the Windrush regulations, what the regulations are, and I've got some particular annoyance over the Windrush policies that they've got in particular, is that unfortunately some people did lose them over a period of time. They weren't asked for these for like 30 odd years, and any human being might not keep the original documents they had when they came off the boat. But it also enabled those who were not coming over legitimately to be able now claim that they were able to do so. So once again, you have that scenario typical in our life when the Home Office messes up, when it doesn't do it properly. Those genuine individuals who have cases of mistaken documentation are actually also lumped in with those who are deliberately trying to hide it, albeit much smaller. The consequences, I don't know how far you're going to deal with this, is that the compensation scheme is just absolutely open to mass abuse.
Does that count for reparations, or is that also excluded from reparations?
No. It'll be excluded as well. We have to give Kent to the Kent and Essex and everything within it to compensate them just simply for reparations for Barbados alone.
But because this happened and the Tories were absolutely terrified of being called racist by the BBC, they made them a statue in Waterloo Station, and they also, as you said, started up this Windrush scheme, which has, and obviously, but now it's become such a cult where the NHS and the royal family, you've got portraits in Buckingham Palace now, commissioned for it, for new modern Britain. And I just want to point out to people as well that this is Reform's position.
Immigration is the lifeblood of this country.
So pro-Windrush, right? The Reform position is that the Windrush also built Britain.
He lost me on that. I might as well have voted Labour if I'm voting Reform now.
Right.
When you have that particular view that immigration is the lifeblood, I mean, I just got furious about it. Yes, my grandmother came here from Ireland and she worked hard. But my grandfather, who lived here generations, he worked hard.
Yes.
It's not the lifeblood. If we cut out immigration today, we wouldn't die and drain away. We wouldn't be sitting there on a life support machine going, help me with an injection.
Your denial of my role as your lifeblood is deeply offensive. I'll be complaining to the Windrush Commissioner.
Let's get that.
Yes.
It's nothing about equality. I hate the idea because it's never, ever about equality.
No, it's not about. It's about revenge and narcissism and trying to carve out
It's
something.
ethnic narcissism.
Yes.
It's ethnic
Yes, it is.
narcissism. It's just an inferiority complex being turned into a whip. That's what it is.
But as Migration Watch point out here, the ethnic minority population in 1951 was around 3%. And as late as 1991, the white British population was still 95% of the population. So the Windrush population would have been less than 1%.
Yeah.
And somehow they changed
Built modern
the
Britain.
entire of society. And I suppose these 95% here were twiddling their thumbs, being on benefits, just dossing about, not really doing anything of particular consequence. No. And so I just wanted to go through some things that Harry had posted as well, because this is what I mean when I talk about myth making, which is that when I said earlier on, it's, you called and, we came. Well, we never did call. In fact, as soon as the Attlee government heard that this ship was going to leave Jamaica and come to Britain, the office scrambled to try and figure out how to make sure it never returned up. You can see here as well, Colonel Secretary Arthur Creech Jones replied, "These people have British passports and they must be allowed to land," but he also added confidently, "They won't last one winter in England." Right, so the intention was never for them to stay. It was never for them to become like an actual part of society. The Labour government at the time just thought it would be a problem that would fizzle out eventually.
Oh yeah, only 6,000 people will arrive if we open the borders to all of Eastern Europe.
Yes.
Yes, said Tony
Same
Blair.
idea.
Same sort of principle. And again, if you go back to, is it Creasy, whoever he was who just, I missed his name.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. It just that, Arthur Creech Jones, Colonel Secretary, that just shows the intransigence and absolute lazy thinking of the liberal elites in this country.
Entirely.
They won't last one winter. I'm sorry, but if you're living...
because it's preferable to Jamaica.
Yeah, if you're living on 2 beans and a couple of rodents, then you come over to Britain, you are actually going to have a lot more to eat. You've got a housing, and you don't mind the cold. You'll get used to it.
Yep.
And so that's why they're on the boats coming over from the Channel, because they don't really particularly care about their own countries. They think it's better off here.
Yep.
So, at the end of the day, people like Creech Jones just do not understand humanity. They don't understand the need and drive for people to leave and what they will sustain and endure if they think it's better than where they're leaving.
Could you please read the previous one? Because I think this is important.
Sure.
The arrival of these substantial numbers of men under no organized arrangement is bound to result in considerable difficulty and disappointment. I hope no encouragement will be given to others to follow their example.
You called and we came.
That's not calling.
No.
That's shooing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Attlee wanted to have it redirected to the African continent.
Right. Well, who did they say called? Was there a letter?
The British.
Did they
called.
come out?
We needed them.
The uncivilized pre-modern British called without knowing that they did.
Yeah.
But their despair called across the ocean.
Yeah.
So this entire thing is, of course, total revisionism. And when we actually think about it, it's like, okay, look, I really don't want to be callous, right? I'm on a natural level. I'm not a mean-spirited person, right? But what have the Windrush generation really contributed in the past 70 years that we couldn't do without? We've got Nottingham Carnival. That's very good. That's very diverse. This results in multiple stabbings every single year.
I don't think it's anything in particular that they can say that they've given to us in particular. I would just turn around and say that when you look at the vast number of people that come here, the vast majority of them did work. They have contributed. I'm not saying all of them, because at the end of the day, we do know those who did come and some of their relations, and those who have come here illegally from places like Jamaica, very involved in criminality, They're one of the biggest levels of people we want to deport. But the vast majority of human beings, when they get here, did work. But there's nothing that they would turn around and say, other than the carnival, that is substantially related to that community.
But also as well, when
you've just got good people that have done good jobs and work just as anybody else would do.
Yep. Yes. But also we talk about this like, when they first arrived back in the 1950s, the standards were just higher. People dressed better. There was still a real patriotism in Britain.
Yes.
Neighbourhoods were in good social standing, all these sorts of things. And so they would have been, just a drop in the ocean of the population. And that would have incentivized integration. It would have incentivized them not to slack either. But now with future generations down the line, living in a population where, the British have gone from 75% in 91.
Well, there were also some pretty bad communities. Obviously, the one I grew up with, pretty much in Moss Side and Hume. They had a lot of people who weren't working. A lot of people, young men, who weren't working, and a lot of the times it was the women. I mean, I say this from growing up. We noticed how many of those who came from the Windrush, the women were the ones who were working, and a lot of them loved to go to the men loved to go in the shebeens. They'd sit out there going to the nightclubs, and this is a fact that they don't want to talk about. This is the history of what I grew up in, the areas I grew up. And when you've got really decent men who were religious, Christian, or wanted to work hard, they were often laughed at by men of their own communities. So it's a great honour for those individuals I knew who worked out of their communities to get to university, study hard, become lawyers, bankers, because it was incredibly difficult when they had a whole lot of community who'd rather say, we won't do the same sort of things, we're not going to blend in. That is a story that's also ignored. That's the lived, if you want to use that, my lived experience, but lived experience of others who knew what those communities were growing up.
Yes. And so it comes down to, and it's brilliant here by the BBC, it's on the Notting Hill Carnival thing. It says, the West London Carnival is in jeopardy. Its chairman, Ian Comfort, said that in a letter leaked to the BBC on Wednesday, in which he asked the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, to provide urgent funding for public safety measures. So they need more funding because they know how dangerous these carnivals get every year. It's just always wanton destruction. And again, just no sense of responsibility for looking after the local area, looking after the local neighbourhood, the people who actually have to live in Notting Hill, God forbid. And so, but also, obviously, champion of the Windrush, Diane Abbott. So the Windrush generations were proudly British, yet immigrants are still fighting to be seen that way. I'm not going to go too much into her article, but what I really want to just hark on for a second here is the fact that when you say the Windrush generations were proudly British, all of this, everything that I've been through before, it's not proudly British, it's proudly Windrush. You're setting yourselves up as another organism within Britain itself, right? We don't have a Huguenot scheme.
That's right.
Don't have a Roman scheme. We don't have a Norman scheme. All these things like, well, you've always been a nation of immigrants. It's like, okay, but we were all British.
And the numbers are so fundamentally different.
Well, of course.
We're talking about 0.1% of the population.
Oh, no.
Zero,
of course
as opposed to what's happened over the last couple of decades.
It's putting 500,000 over 30 years, when since 2018 we've had 267 thousand come across the channel alone. So we're half that number in just 6 years.
Yeah.
So there's no comparison.
No.
And so there's just one more link here as well, which is just again to further the argument. We stand on the shoulder of Windrush pioneers, right? So you don't stand on the shoulders of ancestors of Britain, right? The people who I say go all the way back to the original Tilbury that I talked about at the beginning of the segment, with Elizabeth, and back into the mists of time. No, you recognise that your roots come from the Caribbean. You're loyal to them. You're loyal to their memory. You're loyal to that identity. So I'm sorry, Diane, but there's a reason why you're not seen as British. And the harder you wrestle, the more you're never going to be.
Simply, you're not trying to be British.
You're not trying to be British.
Did you see the video of the girl who was saying we need more money for the carnival? That video where she said, well, there was only something like 5,000 arrests, 364 injured and 2 dead.
That's all.
But 2 million people came.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, sorry,
So
is
looking
this-
for census terms, it's okay.
Is this Notting Hill or Rio?
Yeah.
You know, is this...
So, it's perfectly okay to have a couple of people die every year for an event, but you should fund it just in event because, without it, more
And if the police do stop and search, they're racist, right?
yes.
Oh, indeed.
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 Don't forget. Yeah.
It even says in this article, it says the Windrush flag has been raised over Wolverhampton. Oh, so not the British flag. Now, don't get me wrong. I know that counties have different flags,
Yeah.
but this is a flag for an actual people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so forgive me if when you have the choice of two flags and you choose one from the Caribbean, I'm not inclined to believe that you're actually British. I'm very sorry about that. It's just my cynicism.
Maybe we should stand up in a street stall in the middle of a town and say, here's a flag, that's Britain. Here's a flag, whatever. Are you British? And if they come around and say yes, which is your flag? And if they say that, then how can you be British? Because that's not a British flag.
Yes.
It's a Charlie Kirk moment, isn't it, really?
Well, maybe if you raise that flag, maybe a government-funded, we can use the Windrush scheme to perhaps provide some transport back to Tilbury.
I have to pay reparations for emotional damage.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.